Friends, I'm glad to welcome you to our next episode. Today, the topic is very interesting: safety rules for levitation. This is an important topic for those who study levitation techniques, for those who must always be on guard and know the risks of various techniques, what can happen, and what to pay attention to. In our studio, we have Danila and Ernst Vetter. In general, listen and remember. Let's go. Danila, hello.
Hello, Ernst. Hello, dear viewers, dear friends, everyone who is watching us. Ernst, and of course, the topic of safety rules, I think, is something that should be discussed right before the classes. Therefore, for those who are just starting with this topic, and as far as I know, almost all groups in our school are just now transitioning to this topic, it's the perfect time to focus on it. So, Ernst, what are the main safety rules for levitation that you would highlight? Just like that, without specifics. According to your taste?
In general, there are certain postulates that we need to discuss. The absence of haste. This is a very important factor. The thing is, haste makes waste is not just a saying we use without meaning. In fact, during levitation, this is actually a very important technique. That is, the absence of haste, slow preparation. Firstly, if you are already 95% ready, this is probably the most unpleasant level. You already feel the balance. You already feel it with certain techniques. We won't discuss here on YouTube and in open videos how these techniques are performed. At the penultimate stage, when you jump off and try to catch the balance and you feel it. And it is precisely at this moment that it is very important not to rush. It is very important to solidify all the sensations. Because if you rush forward and try to move to the next level without having solidified the current one, it might work. You might be able to rise, you might be able to hover. And here it is crucial that each level is fully completed, fully ingrained in your consciousness, so that you don't think what's next, how to proceed. That is, everything should work automatically. Why? Again, the first reason is the risk of injury. Falls, falls, falls. Secondly, it's not so much the pain from the fall or any injuries if a person knows how to fall correctly, but rather the fact that it blocks our brain. So if you fall a couple of times while balancing on a piece of air, your brain might just block itself. It might not let you proceed. You know, there's a saying, once burned, twice shy. And this fits perfectly. That is, if you lose that balance, once your brain might say, that's it, I'm blocking, let's start all over again. And you will have to work for a long time on your own to unlock all these moments that your brain might not allow. In fact, when I say that it's very easy to lose or disrupt per sensations during all the training sessions, I always draw an analogy with the gym. If you take a heavy weight in the gym, it can break your bones, it can tear your tendons, and so on. It seems, what bad can happen during esoteric techniques? Maybe you are breaking certain developments in your consciousness. Your brain can break. In the sense that everything you know, everything your brain, after all, it lets you in. Very gradually. You see, for a very long time, our previous generations were taught that this is impossible, that it's all fairy tales, it's all fiction, it's all fantasies, and now you are pushing this wall further and further with your shoulders, your techniques, and everything else, inch by inch. And as soon as you stumble or break somewhere, your brain rebuilds this same wall. This is precisely the moment you need to avoid. That is, not only the trauma, but also this, blockage of our consciousness. When you slip up a couple of times, a person thinks, well, it's normal in sports. If I fall and scrape my knees, it's no big deal. But during esoteric techniques, this is very dangerous. Your brain can, independently of your consciousness, say, that's it, stop. I am trying. My main task is to protect you, to keep you, let's say, with vital functions. And if during this you fall, I can simply block it. And all the techniques that you have been working on for many months can just reset and you will lose absolutely everything. That's why. Each technique is performed very slowly. Preliminary training, preparation, and only when you feel that you have mastered it, you move on. This is a very important point. Danila, sorry, I talked too much, but I think it's useful for...
Very much so, yes, Ernst. All right, then. Most likely, since this topic is related to climbing to some high ascents, have there been any injuries during takeoff for anyone, you know?
Yes, and Arnie constantly had injuries. I think he even broke his leg a couple of times in his youth. Well, in his youth, when he was already involved. I had severe injuries. My students had a couple of injuries. They fell. They were quite serious. Well, not fractures, but there were injuries. It's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing. And let's say even from half a meter, you can twist your ankle, you can dislocate it, and then this pain starts to somewhat block your consciousness, and you can no longer allow yourself such a thing. You know, the ascent will already correlate with this pain that you have experienced. And for a couple of months, your consciousness simply doesn't allow your super abilities to open up again. So it's a dangerous thing. Well, of course, there have been injuries. That's normal. The question is how we deal with it. That is, let's say it's impossible to overcome it very quickly here. That is, it's not like you put a band-aid on and move on with your work. Here, you need a long time for self-awareness again. What did I do wrong? How will I do it right next time? That is, you must mentally not say, I will keep hitting like this, like a ram against a wall, and until this wall breaks, I won't leave. You need to mentally pave a different path for yourself and understand, I made a mistake here, next time I won't make it because... and then list the reasons why it happened to you.
Listen, you just told me something new. Honestly, I didn't know that both Arne and you had injuries. And were these serious injuries for Arnie and you?
Of course. Well, for Arne, I think it was such that he couldn't straighten his knee for about 6 months. That is, he fell on his knee like that. The thing is, it's exactly this. When you cross one leg over the other, and somehow, I don't know, either his boot got caught on the other boot or maybe at the place where the laces are, there might have been some hooks. In short, he didn't manage to put his leg forward in time. He just fell on his knee from a height of, I think, 1.50 meters, well, 1.5 meters. There you have it, something like that. And he limped and hobbled for quite a long time. In general, he had major problems with his knee. They resurfaced later on. He, of course, regenerated himself in that area. But nevertheless, the pain remained for quite a long time. So it's a dangerous thing. It's not as easy as it seems.
I understand. And for you, if it's not a secret, the most...
Well, I didn't have anything that serious. A couple of times, I landed on my foot and somehow twisted it. But for me, in principle, this twist comes from sports. Actually, my ankle is not very strong, because I did a lot of sports in childhood, both boxing and basketball. And in that kind of sport, the ankle can get injured if it's not well secured, strengthened. So for me, in principle, any landing on the foot can be injury prone if the footwear is not very, let's say, proper, which doesn't secure the ankle.
The ankle, yes, I understand. All right, Ernst. Well then, some advice for the guys who are just starting to engage not in preparation, but in levitation itself. After all, how to fall. And not get hurt. That is, if you realize you're falling, what should you do if a person has never done sports, never fallen from anywhere? How, after all, what is the most important thing? To minimize injury. No matter how that sounds.
Look, yes, the most important thing is, of course, the ability to tuck and roll. And then, to have good shoes. Specifically, let's say when I always said that you need to practice balance on a slackline in comfortable shoes, it was either running sneakers or sneakers or something else. When you are directly engaged in levitation, I recommend wearing, well, probably even some basketball sneakers for centers, which have a high part that secures the ankle, because not the shin, but the Ankle, because upon landing, you might indeed usually have your feet slightly pulled back, and, if you land incorrectly, not having time to position your foot since the fall happens instantaneously. That is, you might just crash down. And at that moment, you need to at least manage to position your foot. If at that moment you don't have the right footwear that can protect you, you might injure yourself. So the first thing is footwear, good footwear. The second is the ability to tuck and roll. That is, to fall in such a way that, for example, your arm doesn't go down, so you don't twist your arm the wrong way. In other words, the ability to tuck and roll, the ability to turn your shoulder, the ability to immediately roll if you fall with even a little movement. If you fall down, then the ability to land correctly. Well, you need to practice this, basically. We won't talk about it now, but if anyone is interested, I think the internet is now overflowing with all sorts of how-to videos, so you can just watch how to fall correctly, how to tuck and roll properly during a fall. These are actually very serious techniques. I remember, I was told that there was a person in the clan who was a stuntman. Well, sort of. No, it wasn't his main occupation, but he was a stuntman. And I'm telling you guys, he would climb to a height of 5 meters and fall just like a cat. No matter what position he fell from, he always landed correctly. That is, stuntmen have this sense of proper landing, proper grouping. He really did. Yes, he would climb, and a couple of times during his levitation time, he would lose balance, and somehow, even if he was falling on his back, he would twist and fall absolutely correctly. So this is an important technique. The landing technique is very important. Learn to fall.
Well, and most likely, any relatively high jumps, roughly speaking, above 1 meter, should be done over something, either wet or something very soft. Something like that. Yes, that is, to avoid hitting a hard surface.
Exactly right, of course, yes. But over water is also not allowed. Over water too, because our brain does not perceive the hardness of water and it cannot maintain the balance correctly. That is, over water, it's already quite a complex technique.
That is, over water is more complicated.
Over sand, maybe? Over sand is quite a good technique, yes. It is, in principle, not so injury-prone if you lose your balance.
Ernst, by the way, this is an interesting topic, it turns out.
Danila, sorry to interrupt. And plus, of course, you must be mentally prepared, and you must be prepared on an energy level. That is, before each session, if we are talking about safety techniques, you must work on yourself. Meditatively, every time. That is, remember I said that I did long meditations, not just to prepare myself. I check the functioning of all my chakras. It's similar to an airplane taking off. They check absolutely all the instruments, check all the engines, make sure everything is working, all the flaps are functioning, all the tails, everything. You must thoroughly check yourself. This is your flight. Here. There's nothing to control once you're already in the air.
Got it. You just mentioned that it's more difficult over water. So, why is that? It's not exactly the topic of today's episode, but let's consider it a bonus.
Over water, it's not quite simple because we don't feel any solid foundation. In fact, this levitation is quite an advanced technique. That is, it's a balance between this co-created piece of air or created energy that surrounds you and the solid surface. And if there's no solid surface, you start to float, like on a trampoline. So it slightly distorts the connection itself, or let's say, the proper gravity. Therefore, over water, you need to work much harder, much more complexly than on a solid surface, because water doesn't have that density, and it can make you can bend, well, go much lower and rise up. So you don't have any kind of, stability. Is much easier over ordinary ground.
I understand. One more clarification about the boots. I think this will be quite interesting to many. So, if you recommend high-top basketball shoes, is it something like Converse All-Stars, those high white ones, right?
That secure the ankle. At least, yes, cover the ankle. So they are not low-running shoes where the ankle is completely exposed.
And would Converse, the high-top Converses, be suitable?
Converse, yes. Tall? Of course. These used to be the official basketball shoes. Now everything has changed there, of course, in in the NBA. Now I think they are no longer used there. But those, yes, high tops that wrap around, which you can even lace up to secure your ankle, even if just a little. That is literally, maybe without any additional bandages, but nevertheless, just tie them with laces, so that if you land unevenly on your foot at a slight angle, you don't twist your ankle. This is very important.
Guys from Converse, if anyone is watching us now. Converse, the official recommendation from Ernst for levitation. If you're interested in this topic, we're ready to collaborate with you, so contact us through the links. Well, just in case. If anyone is interested, we're waiting for you. We're ready. Right, Ernst?
We're even ready to launch a new line, Converse Levitation.
Yes. Create a design, a unique design. All right, and just a few more questions here. Does the wind affect takeoff? Well, we understood that. As I understand, it does, right? The stronger the wind, the worse.
It affects it very much, very much. And if there's a strong gusty wind, then you might face a fiasco even during takeoff. Of course, only good weather.
I see. And lastly, perhaps, does the energy of a place affect takeoff? It's just that you've often talked about different places and different energies. Well, more in our personal conversations. So, tell us briefly on this topic, what do you know?
A simple frame like this helps you a lot in determining energy. So, what is energy according to the frame? How do you determine it? If you have strong energy, the rotation goes counterclockwise. So the rotation goes like this. If the energy in this place is weak, it tends to suck in more, and the energy will move approximately like this. So this kind of movement, the oscillation of this pointer, will be clockwise. And with such jerks, if I determine such a place, well, approximately, I can't determine anything here right now because there's nothing special here. But the jerks will be approximately like this. If you feel such slow jerks clockwise, it's a bad place. In this place, you won't achieve anything. Well, maybe you will, but you could be interrupted at any moment. That is, the energy of the place often takes control over our energy, and, anything could happen in these places. That is, some bad events, some bad egregore was present there. Therefore, I always check with a dowsing rod, always. If I feel good energy, counterclockwise, strong, stable, constant movement like this, it's normal. But if you feel jerks clockwise, you should always leave that place. The energy of a place is a very important topic. Please don't lose sight of this. Friends, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for your attention. Don't forget to share this video, subscribe to our channel, and tell your friends about what you've seen. Stay with us. There is much more interesting content awaiting you. Danila, thank you for the interview.
Thank you, Ernst.